Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, taking a look at another 2023 NFL mock draft for the Detroit Lions, coming off some massive news as CJ Gardner-Johnson is coming to Detroit. And before we even get into the mock draft, I just want to say how good of a job Brad Holmes is doing in this offseason, where he's taking a look at the positions of need and addressing it in free agency, right? And so when you get to draft night, you can just start taking the best players on the board. I think so many teams wait for draft night to address certain positions of need, and that kind of prohibits them from taking the best players available in this draft. And I think using the free agency to get established NFL players who can play at the NFL level and fill some of those holes, and then just be able to go draft the best players in the draft is a great idea for a lot of NFL teams that, quite frankly, not enough of them do. Before we get into the mock, though, again, I just want to say thank you to the Detroit Lions fans. We've had a blast taking a look at mock drafts. This is like the third or fourth one we've done, and the reason why we're doing so many of them is because there's not many more teams as active in free agency than the Detroit Lions. And I'm also a massive Aiden Hutchinson fan. It's hard not to fall in love with Dan Campbell, obviously being a Michigan fan. I rock with Aiden Hutchinson. So I like talking Detroit Lions football. I appreciate all the support you guys have shown, all the feedback, all the support. Truly does mean a lot. And I have a blast talking with you guys in the comment section. So let me know how you guys think the free agency has gone. And then let me know how you guys think this mock draft goes. And what you're seeing here as we get into it is Jalen Carter falling to 6 and taking a look at what how the first 5 picks could go in the NFL draft. You got to start being really excited if you're a Lions fan that one of the two, whether it's Jalen Carter or Will Anderson, is falling to number 6. Jalen Carter's draft stock kind of plummeting a little bit, and we'll talk about what it might look like for Jalen Carter to join this Detroit team. But I mean, Colts, the Texans, and the Panthers are kind of locks to go up and get quarterbacks. And then I think the big question mark we have left is, what's Arizona going to do? I certainly could see them staying at 3 and taking Will Anderson, kind of a premier player, and then Seattle maybe getting Jalen Carter. But what you're starting to see is, with all the offseason stuff Jalen Carter's been dealing with, he's falling down draft boards. I mean, I just saw a mock draft the other day that has him going 10 to the Philadelphia Eagles. If Detroit Lions are picking at 6 and Jalen Carter is there, I think this is you run this pick up to the table here. Because one thing that I think is really important for Jalen Carter is getting him into a franchise, into a locker room that has a strong culture. I don't think there's many stronger cultures than the Detroit Lions. So you're getting a guy who, in my mind, on the film, from what you saw in 2021 and 2022 as a pure football player, Jalen Carter is the best player in this draft. And less than a month ago, he was going number 1 overall in a lot of mocks to the Chicago Bears because he was the best player available. I think if Jalen Carter is here at 6, yes, you want to make sure you square away some of the off-the-field stuff, but Jalen Carter is as dominant as it comes from not only stopping the run on the inside, but the burst and bend that Jalen Carter has, and the physicality and the quickness and it's a laundry list of things that Jalen Carter can do that not a lot of other interior defensive linemen can do in the NFL. I think he comes in, if he reaches even 80% of his potential, he's going to be an all-pro in the NFL. I think the Detroit Lions go get Jalen Carter. And again, you don't need to worry about taking cornerback because you go bring in a guy like Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley. Just go get the best player available. And the best player available at number 6 is Jalen Carter. And what's so exciting is I think this is starting to become more and more of a reality for the Detroit Lions, especially if the Cardinals end up trading out of this pick number 3 to a team that wants a quarterback. You're going to get a guy like Will Anderson. You're going to get a guy like Jalen Carter. I think you jump on the Jalen Carter pick at 6. And then at pick 18, you have a lot of different things you can do. Again, what I'm most happy with is, you look, I think in an ideal world, a guy like Joey Porter Jr., Witherspoon, or Christian Gonzalez fall to 18. To the Detroit Lions, they don't here. But this is kind of what we were talking about. You don't need to go up and get a guy like, you see Deonte Banks. I don't think he's a first-round caliber player, right, on my board. So I think that would be a real reach. And if the Detroit Lions didn't go address that secondary in free agency, I think you'd kind of be pressing to take a cornerback at 18. What I think free agency allows you to do is take a step back and say, all right, who are the best players available that we still have on the board? In my mind, Bryan Bresee would be a phenomenal pick, but since you got Jalen Carter, you don't need to go get a guy like Bryan Bresee. I'm looking at Nolan Smith. You guys all saw how he tested a 4.39 40, a 1.52 split, I want to say. This dude is a freak. I don't think he was as productive in college because they rotated a lot. In Georgia, I mean, when you play the defensive line for Georgia, you got a two gap, right? And so he wasn't really put in spots where he can light up the stat sheet. He's a little bit smaller, but he plays the run phenomenally well. Like, this dude is an all-time physical player. And what else I love here, and I just kind of thought of it here because we're doing this live right now. Jalen Carter, I might have some issues with keeping him out of trouble off the field. There's no better guy to bring into your locker room than Nolan Smith. Not only were they teammates at Georgia, but Nolan Smith was the leader of that Georgia Bulldogs defense the last 2 years, and very similar to Aiden Hutchinson, kind of the leader of that program, like Aiden Hutchinson was for Michigan. So now you're bringing in Nolan Smith, Aiden Hutchinson. If you have any question marks about that culture that you're establishing in Detroit, I think you immediately have two of the most impressive young men and leaders as well. I think Nolan Smith is a phenomenal pick. And guess what? Georgia defensive players translate to the NFL. I don't know what they're doing in Athens, Georgia, but they just pump out absolute freak shows. I think Nolan Smith would be a phenomenal pick here. And at pick 48, this is where you might want to address that interior offense line. And Steve Avelia, he's just such a lock. I think he's a dude that can play center. He can play guard. And I think you have one question mark left, and that's probably one of the guard spots. I think Steve Avelia answers a lot of those questions. I think John Michael Schmitz would be I don't even know if John Michael Schmitz is still available, but he's not. Oh, he is. You could go get John Michael Schmitz too. I mean, Steve Avelia, I think, is a little bit better of a guard than John Michael Schmitz. We haven't seen John Michael Schmitz play guard. We know Steve Avelia is a plug and play guard at the next level. Like, this dude will be ready day one in the NFL. He did a phenomenal Senior Bowl. I think that pick makes a lot of sense. And again, you kind of in the first round, you were able to just go get the best players available. In the second round, you maybe start addressing some needs that you want to just add some depth to. And I see Dion Henley here on the board. Taking a look at this linebacker room in general, I would love Jack Campbell to go to Detroit. I don't know if he's still on the board. He's not. He ends up going, he went early, 45 to the Packers. Jack Campbell would be a phenomenal pick for the Lions. Dion Henley, though, is another prospect that I absolutely love in what's a pretty weak off-ball linebacker class. Dion Henley, a little bit smaller. He's sitting at 6'2", 232 pounds, transferred from Nevada. In terms of what you want to see from an NFL linebacker, I think Dion Henley checks off every single box, right? He goes down to the Senior Bowl. He's phenomenal in coverage. He's a very good athlete in space, which is probably the biggest thing you want in an NFL linebacker, right? Going out to the flat, tackling running backs, carrying tight ends up the seam. He can do all of that. He's also a very good pass rusher. A little bit smaller, but does not play small. Like, you see a guy like DeMarvion Overshown, who's a smaller linebacker. He plays a little small, right? Not very physical in terms of taking on blocks, stacking blocks, and shedding blocks. Dion Henley is very physical. He takes on blocks extremely well. He gets off blocks extremely well, but he's also a phenomenal athlete. I think Dion Henley could be a day one starting linebacker as well. And you bring back Anzalone. I'm going to be honest, he's not. I don't think he's that great. I think Henley could come in and kind of be a difference maker a little bit more than Anzalone was. Anzalone. I think that's how you say it. I think Dion Henley is a guy that brings a little bit more juice in that linebacker spot. Now, pick 81. This is maybe where you're dressing another cornerback, and there's a lot of cornerbacks that I absolutely love. If you guys have been listening to me, Eli Ricks is my guy. I think he's another guy that has some question marks off the field. Very similar to Jalen Carter. If Eli Ricks was in a draft class that wasn't so loaded at cornerback, I think he's a first-round talent. He is a first-round talent, right? Reminds me a lot of Joey Porter Jr. in terms of a long, slender, lengthy body, but also with very smooth hips. Didn't play that much. You take a look at kind of the advanced stats for him. When targeted, only a 31.6% completion rate. I mean, he was only targeted 19 times, only 17 times, because he hasn't played that much, but also because he's just lockdown cornerback. Like, quarterbacks are not going to target the best cornerback on the field, and Eli Ricks was the best cornerback on the field. When he started to play for Alabama, the tape is phenomenal. You go turn on that Mississippi State game, that air raid offense. They kept trying Eli Ricks. It just kept not working. Eli Ricks, I think, would make a ton of sense for the Detroit Lions at pick 81. I don't even know if he's going to be available, but there's also a lot of cornerbacks that I really like in this class. Jalen Jones would also be a phenomenal pick. Hodges Tomlinson, I have question marks about if he can play on the boundary. He would also be a really nice pick, but go give me the length that Eli Ricks brings, the athleticism. He's a former 5-star. He has all the traits that you want to be an all-pro type cornerback. He just needs to put it on the field. And again, I'm okay with the Lions taking some dudes that are getting pushed on the boards potentially for some off the field stuff, because I think that's the strongest culture that you see in the NFL. Give me Eli Ricks at 81. That's been a very popular pick for me. And again, Julius Brents from Kansas State, Garrett Williams from Syracuse, all really good cornerbacks. And part of the reason why you can pass on a cornerback at 6 overall or 18 overall, because this cornerback class is just silly loaded. 152, 183, and 195 remaining. I think wide receiver, you could get another body in there. We'll see who's available here. Oh, I don't hate Dwayne McBride. You bring in David Montgomery, which I probably wasn't like the biggest. I didn't love it. Bryce Ford Wheaton. Okay, I'm not going to take Bryce Ford Wheaton because I've taken Bryce Ford Wheaton in just so many drafts. 4.38 40-inch vertical. He's 6'3", 225 pounds. God, I think we just might have to take him. I'm losing track of the amount of times I've taken Bryce Ford Wheaton, but you look at 6'3", 225, and you watch his film, and he's just a big boundary receiver who uses his physical body at the catch point to make plays. You didn't see the 4.38 speed, and then he goes to the combine and tests off the charts, 40-inch vertical, 4.38 speed, like freak show in terms of size and speed. I think you take a flyer on that. I mean, he ran a faster 40 than Jalen Hyatt, which is just kind of insane to think about. The Detroit Lions want a bigger body. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have Jamison Williams coming back. I think at that point, go get a guy who's a big body that can make some plays. Zach Kuntz would have been a nice pick for the Detroit Lions. I kind of want to take a look at what they have at tight end. And we've taken tight end a couple times for the Lions. Darnell Washington's been a popular pick. You don't really know where he's going to go. I would love if the Detroit Lions were able to get Darnell Washington. I don't know if there's any, and you saw them trading TJ Hawk. I don't think they necessarily value. Like, could we just go? I know quarterback, and are you going to go pay a lot of money for a backup quarterback? Are you going to go get a guy right now that can kind of, and you're not drafting, let's be clear on this. This is a backup quarterback, right? This is not the future after Jared Goff, because I think Jared Goff, shown that he can actually be a solid NFL quarterback. And two, all these guys that you're seeing, Aiden O'Connell, Stetson Bennett, Clayton Tune, they're all over 24 years old. Like, they're all bigger guys. Malik Cunningham would be really interesting. So you're looking at in terms of, can I bring in a rookie quarterback who can be a quarterback too, and in a pinch can win us a few games if we need a backup quarterback? Which quarterback gives you the ability to do that? I'm going to be honest with you. I think Malik Cunningham is, because Malik Cunningham is a phenomenal athlete that when plays break down, he can make it happen. I mean, this is one of the most productive quarterbacks in the ACC the last couple of years. He's not Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's quite the athlete, but he's a guy that can come in, move the chains with his legs, kind of be a gritty quarterback that a lot of NFL teams might struggle to deal with, especially if you're prepping for Jared Goff all week, and then Malik Cunningham's in there, a very different set of skills, which might back you off from it because you want a guy that can kind of run the offense that Jared Goff runs. Clayton Tune, Stetson Bennett, 2-time national champ. He wins a lot of football games. I would not argue with Stetson Bennett. Actually, going back, I probably would have picked Stetson Bennett because he's another gritty guy that can just move the chains when you need to. 194 though. Let's stop talking about backup quarterbacks here. Let's go get some sleepers. Jalen Redmond, he's another guy you can just kind of. I mean, I love the Josh Pascal pick. I know he wasn't great. I like Aleem McNeil on the inside as well from NC State. Both guys that I actually loved in the draft class a couple of years ago. Jalen Redmond's another kind of like versatile defensive lineman that can do a lot of different things. I think he can rush the passer pretty well. You might want to do it. I think you go get Jalen Redmond and just continue to add to that depth and that talent pool that the defensive line has. I like how this defensive line is coming together. I think you just got to be patient with some of those guys to develop. I think Aleem McNeil is going to really come into his own. Josh Pascal, I'm telling you, when we talked about leaders, how the Detroit Lions have kind of prioritized drafting leaders, Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Pascal, two of the best leaders we've seen in college football. And then you got Nolan Smith, who's another one. I would love all those guys on the defensive line. That's a really strong group. Taking a look at how PFF grades this out, Jalen Carter is an A+ pick. No question about it. Nolan Smith, I'm surprised. Like, I'm just higher on Nolan. He's a top 15 guy on my board. He's a freak athlete that a lot of people are like, oh, the film and the productivity for Georgia was not good. Well, guess what? Georgia, for one, rotates a lot of those guys. So not a lot of them are playing a ton. And two, like they just asked their defensive linemen to more let their linebackers cook than go make plays themselves. Nolan Smith is phenomenal against the run. He's a very good pass rusher. I like that pick a lot. Steve Avelia, eating your vegetables. That's probably what Dan Campbell would say. We're just eating our vegetables, getting a nice guy on the offensive line. Henley's a phenomenal pick. Eli Ricks is a phenomenal pick. Bryce Ford Wheaton, people are not on the Bryce Ford Wheaton train like I'm on the Bryce Ford Wheaton train. Malik Cunningham, I probably would have gone Stetson Bennett there. Now that I think I kind of rushed that pick a little bit. And then Jalen Redmond, just a solid, like one of our sleepers that my brother and I both really like. This seems to be a nice NFL draft for the Detroit Lions. And again, I love the fact that they don't need to pick any positions of need at 6 and 18. They can just go get really good players. And guess what? In Athens, Georgia, they cook up really good players. I think that makes a lot of sense. Just a phenomenal draft for the Detroit Lions. And again, thank you guys for checking us out. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate y'all, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.